let's talk about giraffeness on this episode of Pushback.
Go, Jonny, go, go. Go, Jonny, go, go. Go, Jonny, go, go.
If you're concerned about the direction our culture is heading, then maybe it's time to push back.
Hello, my dear listeners. This is Dr. Jonny, and this is another episode of Pushback. This isn't the first time that I've had a title where I think I've made up a word that really isn't a word, but we're going to talk about giraffeness today. It's the essence of being a giraffe, you know? But as we go through the podcast, hopefully, as in the past, it will all become clear. And this is actually a word that I didn't make up. This is a word that was actually in the literature. I want to lean into a topic today that I've dabbled in many times before because I feel like it's such an essential portion of our culture and our context. I am a scientist. I'm a medical doctor, as many of you know, and I take it so seriously. And I love my profession and I love science. And if you've listened to my podcast over the past 5 years, 6 years, you'll know that anytime anybody distinguishes between God and science as if they are two separate entities, it really gets my blood to boil sometimes. And because I believe that science is actually the discovery of God's goodness. Science is the beautiful unveiling of what the Father actually created. I don't believe they're mutually exclusive. I don't believe that one cancels the other, and I don't believe that one has disproved the other. So you have to be in one camp or the other. I believe that's ludicrous. I believe that when we study science and we lean into the things of this world and we examine them and we learn them, which I have done in my profession, I believe it speaks to God and His greatness. But it also solidifies what we know and have learned in the Bible. I don't think they are mutually exclusive. But make no mistake about it, I believe that in this time, in the culture in which we are living, that we are actually being lied to by scientists. Now, that's a big statement, and it's not applicable to all scientists. So I'm not trying to make a big, broad brushstroke statement about that specifically. But there is this issue of evolution, which is based on and a premise of a lie. And that I have hopefully proven over time and will continue to prove. And so I want to sprinkle into my podcast simple evidences of creation. Now, I don't even believe that we actually have to give evidence of creation because that's not what's being taught. Evolution is being taught. And so they actually have the burden of proof. And it only takes a certain sprinkling of evidence to actually disprove their theory, which should open the floodgates of discussion about science, the purpose of science, the accuracy of science. And so I believe that we can pursue this, and I hope in this podcast to just give you very simple, practical talking points that we can engage the world and have them actually defend what they think they believe. Because actually what they believe is based on a premise, and the premise is a lie. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, it takes way more faith to blindly believe in evolution than it does in creation. Easily, without a doubt. And I want to offer you just real simple examples, and this will be another one. See, the secular scientists have a real problem, and the problem is truth. Truth should be their pursuit, but unfortunately, truth has actually become their nemesis. And so they have distorted things, they have put a mirage around things, they have used words like magic and magical appearances and things outside of science to try to explain what they're actually proposing. And so I call it pseudoscience. I don't believe it actually is science at all. I believe it's pseudoscience. It's actually a philosophy or a religion that they have doubled down on. And the more they go into it, the more the evidence doesn't land and follow their train of thought, the more they are caught in their lie. And so I don't want you to just take my word for it. I want you to actually take their word for it. Because as you pursue things and as you try to plug up the holes that are so prevalent in the theory of evolution, it becomes harder and harder to defend it. And that is what we are seeing. Eric Lyons is a defender of creation and apologetics. And I'm just going to read some things that he has wrote because he did it so well from The Wonders of God's Creation. And he lays out a little bit of what we're talking about here. Let me just give you the background of the theory of evolution. He says, according to the general theory of evolution, about 14 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was concentrated into one very dense, very hot region that may have been much smaller than a period on this page. For some unknown reason, this region exploded. As a result of the alleged explosion of a period-sized ball of matter, billions of galaxies formed, and eventually planets such as Earth evolved. Supposedly, the evolution of galaxies in every planet, moon, and star, and these galaxies all came about by non-purposeful, unintelligent accidents. Likewise, every life form that eventually appeared on Earth purportedly evolved by mindless, random chances over millions of years. This is the theory, my friends, that is being taught in public school and colleges throughout our nation as fact. None of us were there, none of us can see it, none of us can prove it, and none of us can replicate it, which is the backbone of science. I get a little fired up. He goes on to write, some life forms, quote, just happened, end quote, to evolve the ability to reproduce asexually, while others just happened to develop the capability to reproduce sexually. Some life forms just happened to evolve the ability to walk along vertical ledges, like geckos, while others just happened to evolve the gift of glowing, like glowworms. Some life forms just happened to evolve the ability to make silk, like spiders, which pound for pound is stronger than steel, while others just happen to evolve the ability to turn 90 degrees in under 50 milliseconds while flying in a straight line. For example, the blowfly. Allegedly, everything has come into existence by random chances over billions of years. According to the general theory of evolution, there was no mind, no intelligence, no designer that created the universe and everything in it. So that lays the foundation of our discussion today, is whether that's true or not, whether that can be proven or not, whether that can be displayed or reproduced or not. He goes on to write, ironically, though atheistic evolutionary scientists insist that the earth and all living things on it have no grand intelligent designer, these same scientists consistently refer to the amazing, quote, design, end quote, in nature. Consider an example of such paradoxical language in a recent National Geographic article entitled Biomimetics, Design by Nature. The word design, or one of its derivatives, designs or designed, appeared no less than 7 times in the article in reference to nature's designs. Evolutionary biologist Andrew Parker spoke of his collection of preserved animals as a treasure trove of brilliant design. After interviewing Parker, National Geographic writer Tom Mueller noted how the capillaries between the scales of a thorny devil lizard are, quote, evidently designed to guide water toward the lizard's mouth. He then explained how insects offer an embarrassment of design riches. Mueller referred to nature's sophistication and clever devices and praised nature for being able to turn simple materials into structures of fantastic complexity, strength, and toughness. After learning of the uncanny, complicated maneuverability of a little blowfly, Mueller even confessed to feeling the need to regard the insect, listen to this, quote, on bended knee in admiration, end quote. Why? Because of its mysterious and complicated design. Brilliant and well-funded scientists around the world admit that living things perform many feats, quote, too mysterious and complicated to be able to replicate, end quote. They are designed allegedly with no designer. My friends, this is the problem. This is the problem that scientists face today, is that their own eyes, their own research, their own study shows a story of a designer, a brilliant designer, a complex designer, an extravagant designer. And yes, we should be on bended knee in awe of what we see every single day in this world. And yet, the scientists are determined to remove God from the equation or even from the design itself. Well, obviously, there's a reason for that, because the notion of a loving God is one they feel is contrary to science. But, as we just read, they have to admit that there's something there. There's something there that they cannot explain. So I want to give you the most towering example. That was for you. That was for my dad, who would appreciate the pun as I lean into the miraculous giraffe. It's the most towering example of God's design. Written by Karen Veit in 2017, entitled Towering Testimonies to God's Design. Let's talk about life as a giraffe. Remember, we don't need thousands of examples. We really just need a couple examples. I just talked about the thorny devil lizard. Well, the giraffe is such an unbelievable example. We just need a few, because we have to just show that what they are pitching us doesn't line up to science. She writes, towering tall over the African savanna, the giraffe looks at it as if it belongs in the circus. It strolls on stilt-like legs and its neck parades high in the sky, but the giraffe is no comic freak of nature. It displays divine design. Since the giraffe gives birth standing up, the newborn calf falls more than 5 feet to the ground. Within 15 minutes after the calf is born, it stands up on those gangly legs. In short order, the nearly 6-foot calf conquers the two distinct giraffe gaits. The first gait is a slow pace as the giraffe alternately moves its left legs and then right legs. When fleeing from predators like lions, the giraffe can gallop for a short time at speeds to almost 40 miles per hour. A giraffe is most at risk to a lion attack when spreading its front legs apart and bending down to lap up water. Being vulnerable to predators, half of giraffe calves do not survive their first year. The other half, however, may live 20 years in the wild. Adult giraffes usually thwart predators by their high vantage point, swift gallop, and powerful kick, which can kill a lion. The giraffe's brown and cream pattern camouflage it from predators. Although giraffes' patterns may look identical, each giraffe has unique markings. A giraffe wields its long neck to communicate. It shows submission by stretching its neck straight and tall with nose pointed up. To show aggression, the giraffe swoops down its neck parallel to the ground. Male giraffes use their necks to fight for dominance by necking, basically an arm wrestle with their necks, and sparring, flinging their necks and horns into their opponents. Giraffes are mostly silent creatures besides a few sounds like grunting and bellowing, but scientists have picked up low-frequency sounds called infrasound waves, which giraffes may use to communicate even at distances greater than a mile. Jean Lamarck and later Charles Darwin proposed that a giraffe evolved a long neck by inheriting traits acquired through use and disuse. Darwin thought a drought could have led to early giraffes needing to stretch their necks to reach leaves in treetops. But today, through a greater understanding of heredity, we know that a giraffe with a stretched neck from reaching wouldn't pass on that characteristic to its offspring. So, oops, I guess we're 0 for 1. A modified idea suggests that the long neck evolved through mutation and natural selection, which favored those giraffes that could reach higher branches. Such an idea raises the question, what did the younger giraffes eat, and why do giraffes even today often eat at shoulder height and below? More importantly, the proposed progression from short to long-necked giraffes is absent from the fossil record. I guess that means 0 for 2, 0 for 3. Desperately trying to explain the giraffe. But here's where things, I believe, become super interesting. Evolutionists also encounter a design dilemma for the evolution of a long neck. That 6-foot neck requires an intricate blood vessel system to maintain proper blood pressure between the heart and brain. A giraffe bending its neck down to drink water is a marvelous display of design. The 25-pound heart that pumps blood way up that neck against gravity suddenly pumps down with gravity, which should cause the delicate brain to explode. But the blood vessels are uniquely designed with reinforced walls, bypass valves, and a cushioning web and sensor signals to moderate the pressure when the giraffe bends its neck down. The reverse of this intricate system happens when the giraffe raises its head so that the pressure is regained and the giraffe doesn't pass out. In addition to the tight skin on the giraffe's legs has been compared to an astronaut's G-suit because it prevents high blood pressure from pressing out of the capillaries and swelling and bursting their legs. And here's the punchline, however, is that all of these systems needed to be put in place at once. It does no good to have a 25-pound heart pumping blood 6 feet into the air to keep their brain perfused, but it also has to have this bypass valve, complicated capillary system of pressure relief valves that allow the giraffe then instantly to put its head down and drink water without its brain exploding. Each one of those systems is incredible, but all of it needs to be in place at once, or the giraffe simply doesn't survive. It doesn't reproduce. It just becomes a passed out animal for the lion's dinner. Ken Ham, who I quote so often, penned the problem for evolutionists. He says, how many giraffes blew their brains to pieces when bending down? How many passed out as they lifted their heads, becoming food for the lions, until the special features somehow evolved? It's obvious that the very first giraffes had to have these special features right from the beginning. If not, they would have not survived to pass them on to their offspring. My friends, it's a simple example, and when you have a discussion with an evolutionist, all you need to do is say, yeah, what about the giraffe's neck? And if they said, well, over time, anything's possible. Given enough time, given enough millions of years, this can slowly progress and change. The problem is there's no fossil record to show that that actually happened. There's no evidence for it. There's no sign. It's not reproducible. We're not seeing giraffes evolving today. We're seeing no evolutionary benefit to having the long neck versus a slightly shorter neck. The point is that they were created this way by an incredible, complex, loving, all-knowing, all-powerful God. That's what the science actually says. And to say anything else is actually operating in falsehood. It's a lie. They have to propagate something that's a lie. There was a fossil that came out in 2015, and of course the headline read, "The missing link, the final solution to the giraffe dilemma." Because they found sort of an intermediate animal that had a somewhat longer neck. Well, it didn't take long before scientists researched this and found out that this animal was in no way related to a giraffe. And now they're 0 for 5, 0 for 6, 0 for 7, because the evidence will never be there because that's not how it came to be in the first place. My friends, I want us to be so confident in the Bible and what it says, so confident in our Father and our powerful God and what He does, that we don't have to have science be the stumbling block in which we feel like we need to defend something. There is no burden of defense. What they are teaching your children in science class in high school and in college are based on lies. It's not based on science. Don't fool yourself. Science has not proven any of this. In fact, the scientists themselves are tripping over themselves trying to come up with some kind of solution to this problem. We are still talking about this in 2025 because science has done such a poor job defending their actual religion. Evolutionist Robert Wesson addressed this issue in his book, Beyond Natural Selection. This is what he said. All these things had to be accomplished in step, and they must have been done rapidly, referring to the giraffe. That it could all have come about by synchronized random mutation strains the definition of random. The most critical question, however, is how the original impetus to giraffeness and a million other adaptations got started and acquired sufficient utility to have selective value. That is the question, isn't it? The observer must be often tempted to suppose that organisms have responded to their conditions and needs more purposefully than strict Darwinian theory can allow. Let me interpret what he just said. There must be something else. That's what he's saying. We must be missing something. Because to explain a giraffe simply along Darwinian lines, this is an evolutionist speaking, is even too hard for me to believe. That's what he's saying. There must be something else is missing. Well, he couldn't be more right. It's called a creator. That's what's missing. That's what's missing from their equation. That's what they can't simply get around. There's only one who had a design for giraffeness. And that's our beautiful creator who, in his infinite wisdom, decided to create a giraffe with all its complexity. A giraffe whose brain doesn't explode every time he leans over and drinks water. He took care of that. It's the complexity of a creator, and we should absolutely, 100%, bow our knee in awe. It says that one day every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Well, I don't believe we have to wait till we see him coming back in his glory. I think we can see it today in his creation and what he's provided for us. We should be absolutely in awe. Spend one semester in medical school like me and just sit in awe of the complexity of our human body. And, no pun intended, it should blow your mind. That should blow your mind. My friends, these are just I just want to sprinkle in some evidence, sprinkle in some talking points. You don't need to be a PhD. You don't need to have full understanding of evolution versus creation. All you need to do is say, yeah, what about the giraffe's neck? That's all you have to do, because they have to explain it, and they can't, and they won't be able to. And because of that, that puts their scientific theory, and I'm being super polite by using the word theory, that puts their scientific theory into doubt. It just takes one piece of evidence. And there are lists and pages and novels and books of evidence that speaks to a loving, beautiful, powerful creator. Let's celebrate that. Let's move with boldness. Let's have those discussions, because I'm not sure that it's science and science classes that win over their hearts, but I don't know that it isn't, because he's incredible. And as we discover him and we discover his ways and the things that he has done for us and the complexity of his nature and his goodness towards us, boy, that should shake us to the core and turn our hearts towards the one, capital O, who's created it all. Thanks for tuning in again, this podcast. I love sharing my heart. I'm so inspired and fired up by these things of the Lord and his creation and his goodness. And so let's be armed with that information. Let's be armed and ready to defend his nature and his goodness and his ways as we move throughout our culture. So let's go together now to set and shape the culture.